Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Aguillon. Welcome to The Dialogue Effect, the podcast where we explore how conversation can strengthen relationships and can truly create change. This podcast is really for anyone who wants to be a better communicator, whether that be at work or at home or in your everyday life while talking to people. In this first episode of The Dialogue Effect, we are going to hear from my friend Ava, my best friend Ava, who works in public affairs for the Air Force. But before we do that, I really wanted to dive into why dialogue is so important to me and how it's helped me in the past. So, I always thought that I was a phenomenal communicator. I kind of grew up with that notion. My mom really instilled that in us when we were younger, knowing how to introduce yourself to strangers, how to shake people's hands and introduce yourself in a confident way, how to look people in the eyes and make eye contact when you speak, as well as how to speak up for yourself. Those are not easy things to do, and a lot of it is inherently taught. I think when you're young, or at least easier to inherently teach to kids. Especially in my situation, I had two older brothers, and if you didn't speak up for yourself, you would get trampled over. So I really did learn at a young age how to successfully communicate, for lack of a better word. However, for those of you that don't know, I actually spent 5 years in the Air Force. I was active duty Air Force. And when I got into the military, I realized that I knew nothing about communication. You are immediately inundated when you go into the military with taking everything you thought you knew about communication and you get new rules, right? And this means your communication while speaking to superiors. This means your body language. This means how to address other people, whether they're above you, below you, or the same rank. And this was a whole new ball game that you're going into, right? As a new airman, as a fresh 18-year-old that thinks they know everything about the world, this was the professional league for sure, in terms of communication and how to adapt to situations. So I learned very quickly that successful communication is not just portraying confidence while you speak, although that's important. That is not the root of it. Successful communication is not just being able to project your voice while you're in a room of people. Successful communication is not just about making eye contact and making sure that you're being heard, because ultimately that doesn't always work. Being the loudest, being the most trying to be the most articulate, trying to get your point across, that doesn't always work. That doesn't mean successful communication. Successful communication is truly about listening. It's about listening deeply, and it's about analyzing your audience, seeing who you're speaking to, and then adapting based off of that. Right? People call it code switching or adapting to the situation or however you want to call it. However, at its core, communication is about the receiver. A successful communicator needs to be able to send this information, and the receiver needs to be able to take that information and articulate it. Think about when you're talking to a baby. I like to use this example. When you meet a baby, for the first time, you don't go and extend your hand and say, "Hello, baby. My name is Jackie. It's very nice to meet you today." You're not going to do it like that. It's not this professional atmosphere. When you are talking to a baby, you adapt, right? You say, "Oh, hi, little baby, and you get on the baby's level, and you bring your pitch up, and you act a little goofy because that is your audience, and you adapt to the baby's interest or vocals or visual cues or whatever. Now, this is the same thing while interacting with somebody who is when you're in a professional setting, or you're talking to your boss, or you're adapting your tone while you're in a conversation that may be hostile, right? Like, we have to, when we're, maybe when you can feel like an argument is starting to arise in, with your parents, your boyfriend, or whatever, that's important to bring down your tone so the situation doesn't escalate. That is adapting to the audience. It's adapting to the situation. And we do it every day, all day, and we don't even realize it. This is why I could not think of a better guest than my best friend, Ava Leon. Ava is a civilian working as a public affairs specialist with the Air Force, and her job is all about bridging the civilian audience and her military audience, which is not as easy as it sounds. Ava is constantly navigating how to shape messages, manage public events, and communicate effectively in a high stakes, high visibility role. I can't wait for you to see her interview. Please enjoy, everyone, Ava Leon. So I'm interested in how dialogue truly plays a role in the public affairs job.
Well, dialogue has a hold in everything we do, even from basic office communication. We have a lot of public affairs employees at Joint Base San Antonio, and some of them are geographically separated throughout the city. So you really have to stay on top of like connecting with everyone and making sure everyone is tuned in, because miscommunications have happened and they will keep happening. So you really have to make sure that you're taking the time to think about what you're saying. If it's in text, like make sure it's not misconstrued by anyone. I know, for example, today, our commander, think of that as like our CEO of our business. The commander's wife is also supposed to attend a lot of these events that we throw, like the Great Texas Freedom Fest and all the Fiesta events that are going to be happening next weekend. Next week, and it's going to be important for her to be there because other spouses will be there as well. So she asked that we make a list of recommended events that we think she should attend. We made this list, and she mentioned that her foot hurts. So she wanted to know if she'd be sitting or standing, right? It's very nitty gritty. All of the they want to know how they can get there so everything goes as smoothly as possible. And me and my team, we put this together for her. And then my boss came over to me today and asked, everyone else was out at the office today, and she asked me to fix this document because Mrs. Oakland did not like the wording that we had chosen. And she found it offensive that we said, my coworker had put like a chair will be set aside, and she took that to mean like she was going to get special treatment and she didn't want to be singled out in that way. She's like, I just want to know if seating's available. My boss told me like that General Oakland and his wife were deeply offended by this, and I didn't think that's something anyone would be deeply offended by, but they were, and I had to fix it right away before I went to my next meeting and rework that whole thing. So it's like, kind of, once you've written something or put something together, you have to read it back and view it from all sorts of different perspectives. Like, could this offend anyone? Could this be misconstrued in any way? And yeah, that's not even, a public affairs part. That's just office dynamics. So
Right.
it's very important to know how to communicate and to choose your words carefully, because even if you had no ill intent, someone could still perceive it and take it in a way where they find it offensive or insulting.
That is fascinating. If you hear stories like that, and you're kind of like, oh, that would never happen to me. Like,
Right.
please, a chair, people don't get offended. Like, people will understand what I'm saying. But in a job like yours, where you are the face, like you are the middle person between this base and the public, so you have to be essentially perfect. I mean, how do you navigate
how do you navigate that? How do you navigate the conversations? And what do you learn from, like, I guess, not silly, but maybe things that you wouldn't be offended about that other people would?
Right. Because when my boss came over to me, I was like, oh, that's a really easy little fix. And she was like, well, actually, it was a big deal to them. So I need this like by the end of the day as soon as possible. I think you learn by kind of making mistakes, right? You have experiences like that and then you think differently. And I think a great way to learn how to communicate to people is also just listen. Like when I'm at an event where maybe I feel a little out of place, there's some politicians there. The general is there with his wife and other high-ranking military commanders. The San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. These are very influential individuals. And I feel like when I've had to go with those, I'll kind of sit back a little bit and watch as my coworkers interact with them, and I'll listen to like the different words they choose, how they approach people differently, whether they're more casual or formal. You kind of have to soak it all in. And usually my coworkers, they'll whisper to me and let me know who someone is and what their background is. It says we need to know so that we can tell our boss, the commander, how they should interact with them as well. So I think it's being very observant and self-aware.
You rock. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Ava. You are the best. And please, everyone, give a virtual round of applause.